Welcome everyone for another episode of Standardizing Journey Management. We started with redefining journey management, but last time we kicked off the standardization trilogy, or actually we're doing 4 episodes. We have a bonus episode, and that was last week where we had Kim Salazar from Nielsen Norman Group to help us define journey management together. And as we promised, we're now gonna dig into the nuts and bolts of journey management. And today's topic is journey templates. And who else better to walk us through the why, the how, and the what of journey templates, what he has seen so far across the world, across the globe, across different types of companies of working with journey templates to standardize their way of working. Then Kaspar, our own CX lead. Welcome, Kaspar. Great to see you.
Great to be here. Yeah,
right.
As always.
So, I was doing the housekeeping notes a little bit earlier when people dropped in, but I see we have more people coming in. So I'll do it one more time quickly. There's a Q&A button below you can use to drop us any questions you have. We do a few polls in between. And I think Kaspar will be doing the majority of the show and tell today, because that is what we're going to do. We are going to focus on how to get it done. But in true TheyDo fashion, we'll first start with why journey templates? Why are they important? Should I start from scratch? What is the benefit of doing this? And especially as you scale in the organization, how can you actually use them, maintain them, and also help others to do journey management in a consistent way? So Kaspar will talk about this first. And then we're going to do a quick recap. Not everyone has had the privilege or the experience of creating journey templates. So we'll go over that quickly in a few minutes to show you how you do that in TheyDo. And then we're going to talk about the basic default templates that we offer. They are tried and tested from years of practice, but also show you how to create your own, right? How to make them your own. And as a little bonus, we will talk about the differences between a micro versus macro journey. And basically all templates kind of can be seen through these different lenses, but we'll get into that near the end. So without further ado, I think Kaspar, maybe good to start defining why journey templates, but also maybe start with a little bit of experience. What have you seen work, doesn't work? Why are journey templates important? And what is the difference between those visualization maps that you see, if you Google journey templates and all of these other different visualization platforms? I don't think that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about operationalizing journey templates and using that. So maybe, take us through the basics. What are journey templates? Why should you use them? And let's take it from there.
Yeah, so, well, as you mentioned, I've now worked with a lot of different clients all over the world. And what we really see is that, especially if you start to scale up journey management, it becomes ever more important to, standardize the way of working. That, of course, is, I think, one of the main unique benefits of working with TheyDo is that it really allows you to work in the same way, even if you have multiple teams that are maybe even spread across different departments, or maybe even different operations across the world. And of course, you want those teams to be able to understand each other and to learn from each other and to maybe look up. From my own experience, I was working at a big bank one time. And it took me a few weeks at least to gather all the journeys that I needed to have as input for my own project, and to even understand what have all these people done. Even an expert, I've made a lot of journeys, and even it took me a lot of time to actually realize hey, what type of lanes or what type of insights have those other teams actually mapped here? So that's just a very anecdotal thing that I experienced, where it would have been great to just know hey, everyone in this company makes journeys this way. So if you've seen one journey, you've seen all of them. At least you can understand all of them. So I think that's one of the main benefits of creating journey templates. And of course, if you have them, it also helps you to get started faster, because when you start mapping a journey, you don't have to think all over again of what insights should I map, or what type of structure should my journey have. But you can just start from a template and start mapping right away. And that, of course, in the end also leads to consistency. It just leads that, all the journeys that you create have the same build-up. And of course, it's not something that you have to enforce or be very strict about. I also believe that, journey templates are a starting point. And of course, when you start working with them, You can always add extra lanes if you think it's relevant for you, or like the specific type of thing that you want to show. But at least it's good to start from the same point and have those things consistent throughout all of the journeys that you create across your organization.
And have you seen many organizations like figure this out on their own? Like, hey, okay, so if we're all going to be like journey led and figure out projects and priorities around journeys, like we should better also standardize this. Are those the questions they come to you with? Is that something they've thought of? And can you give some examples of where people start with the thinking around this?
Yeah, I mean, I think many customers of ours, right? One of their main things is they want to standardize, and so yeah, I've had many customers that have created journey templates pretty much the first thing, even before starting to think about frameworks or whatever. Like really from the first moment, that was one of the first things they did, to create a shared journey template. And it makes sense because, once you start mapping journeys, the earlier you start with a journey template, the better, because then for sure everyone will have started the same way. It's much harder to go back to all the teams that created journeys afterwards and, ask them to transform their journeys into the standard template afterwards. So yeah, the earlier you do it, the better, I'd say.
And as the practice evolves, I mean, mapping is one thing, but managing at scale is another. I know for a fact that when you start thinking about like what would be like the best structure to have different kinds of journey templates that people can work with, and then you discover, cross-functional teamwork is done differently than we actually thought at the first step. Like, I know we're going to touch base on working with templates, but is there like some patterns that you recognize organizations go through? And then I think we can segue nicely into like figure out like, okay, so how do you create a template? Go into TheyDo a little bit, but like, can you speak to how the first idea of, hey, we need a standardized way of templating our workflows and standardize that, to how that evolves over time? Is that the same, different? Like, what kind of decision that all people run into?
Maybe you can answer your own question there. Like, I think you might have an idea for an answer already, perhaps.
Yeah, I see. Like, you want to think with the end in mind, but like even starting with a basic customer journey can also be hard. Like, people think like, oh, okay, so but I have different insights, like you mentioned earlier. Like, I do research where I talk to people, and someone else is like collecting only insights from, let's say, their ticketing system for their customer support chat. Those are all insights. And how do you, build them out in your journeys, but also make that work consistent? That is what I see is hard. And sometimes I see like make templates as simple as you can go and then add like new things to it and allow people to do that. I've also seen companies, and I think some of them are here today, maybe we can hear from them, where they say like, no, we actually have a very, very fixed set of how we create journeys. We even lock that content in, so people have to fill that in for a journey to be accepted, basically, in our model. So I don't know. I think both work, but I haven't seen one truth. I think that's the answer there. Can you relate to that?
Yeah, I can actually. What's interesting, yesterday I was talking to a client, and they said like, hey, we also want to have our marketing team, create marketing funnels in TheyDo, but we're not sure if we should create a separate template for them that they can work in, or if we should train them to use the more service design or UX type of way to make journeys. What do you recommend, right? And I told them like, well, in the end, of course, the main goal should be to have one source of truth. So you always end up with the same journeys. And that's where all the different teams, even if it's different expertises, like you want to even share one source of truth. But also there should, of course, be a transition towards that point. And I told them like, for the time being, maybe just give them their own marketing funnel template. They can get started with that. As long as they map the journeys that they make with that at the right point in the framework, you'll always be able to, merge things later again, especially because TheyDo, of course, allows stuff like, opportunities that, all the opportunities, the solutions, and perhaps later also all the insights that you create get logged into repositories. So once they're in there, you can also map them to all of your service design journeys or all the other types of journeys that you might have. So as long as you use a template that people can use to input all the data that they gather, or the solutions or the opportunities, you can always link those things to all the other journeys again later. So as long as you give them something that they understand to get started, which journey templates are, of course, it's always a good thing to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And also maybe good distinction, and then we'll head into TheyDo. Like what we see is that there's a difference between, and I think most of you joining us today are the builder type in the organization, building, setting the framework, thinking about the structure, thinking about how to standardize this. And you have people that are using your work and working with journeys on a day-to-day. So there's a big difference between like, am I creating stuff for others, building the standardization, versus am I using it? And sometimes you are using where you're building in another way, but that is a big difference that we've seen. There's some builders in teams, there are some users in teams. You can be both, but it's a good distinction to understand, like for your organization, who that is. They all have admin rights, obviously, but maybe to get a sense of who's listening in today, and then we'll go into creating a bunch of templates first, and then go into the details. I wanted to know, for everyone listening in, I'll launch the poll, like, what is your experience so far with using and standardizing this? Using or created templates. Have you done this? I use it all the time. I use custom templates because, using the basic set that we see on the screen is just a starting point. I created custom templates. Like, where are you at? A template, a basic template, is like a foundation. So what we don't do is have, some content for everyone to use, but it's all about the structure. So let's say you have like your journey phases here, and you'll have journey steps, but the journey steps we don't save, because that is actually the magic of using the journeys. What it actually means to create and save a template is you can basically add any type of lane to your journey. And also, if you have the rights, lock it, because you want to make sure that everyone will use that lane in your template. So then users will not be able to remove the lane, but just can play around with the journey content. And then the idea is obviously to name the lanes accordingly, like on stage. I know we're going into blueprints in a second, but like naming this out, like layering on the different lanes of your journey, like your customer actions or persona, steps, mood, everything together will allow your teams to work in this. And James, to your point, once you've set up the structure, and I'm going to hand it over to Kaspar again, it's up to you to save it. So you can save it as a template. I'm going to do this as a test for the webinar. You can even add a nice image, a description, but I won't do that for now. And now you've saved it. So anyone starting a new journey will then create a new journey from the test for the webinar. Here we go. And I can use that template to get started, give it my own name, and start to overriding the basic properties, but the structure will be saved and then ready for me to use, add my personas, and get started. There we go. We have comments, we have front stage, customer actions. There we go. It's the same template.
If you want to have an overview of all the templates that you've created, you can also go to settings. And here you can go to journey templates. So here you'll see all the templates that have been created. And yeah, this is our internal overview. So they're a little bit crazily named. But for example, here you can see roadmap template. And yeah, if you want to edit or like the description or remove some, you can do it from here. And what's also interesting here is that as TheyDo, we have several default journey templates that you can use to get started. And they can be useful, of course, to start out with. But if you have your own custom templates that you want to use, and you don't want anyone to pick the ones that we've created, you can simply uncheck this little box here, and then they won't show up anymore. So if I create a journey now, yeah, this is still called TheyDo because we're in the TheyDo environment. But if it's your organization, you'll only see your own TheyDo templates here, and not the ones that we've created. So yeah, then you can limit the templates to, the custom ones that you've built.
This will be one of the other tiny things we do, like locking lanes. You saw me do that earlier. Like this is for builders and for admins only. So making sure that this particular lane in the template, if you save it as a template, will always be there. It can be rearranged in different orders, but the lane itself will always be there. It's done by locking, and that's an admin specific feature. So users cannot tamper with that.
Here you can see all our basic templates. So we only have limited time today, so we want to do a little poll and ask you, like, what would you like to know more about? But I can give you a quick rundown. Basic customer journey is really the most simple journey that you can imagine. So it just has all the basic needs, pains, gains, quotes, opportunities, and solutions. This is also our number one most used template, actually. So I'd be happy to tell you more about that. But then there's more, of course. The number two most used one that we have is the service blueprint. Service blueprinting is a tried and tested method, actually, to bridge the gap between service design or UX and the actual backend and the front end systems, supporting systems that you need to actually realize the vision that you have for your journeys. So that's also a very useful one. We have the customer life cycle. That's actually a different variation. You can both use it for macro journeys, so like more high level journeys, or even the highest level, like a whole life cycle. Then we have two variations of marketing funnels. So marketing funnels are actually kind of journeys with a little bit more focus on conversion metrics usually, and some specific phases that marketeers always use. But in essence, they're just journeys with those familiar terms. And we have the job to be done timeline. That's also like a specific life cycle type timeline. That is a specific methodology that some of our clients actually use. And then there's two ones that are maybe a little bit special. Story maps are what you can use to plan how you will release new features. So for example, you can order solutions that you have and order them according to, what is the most minimum viable product, which features do release in other releases. And then we have a roadmap. So you can also make a journey and just plan it as a calendar, especially if you have, for example, marketing content or something. You can use that to actually plan, when do we release certain things, for example, or when will we release different solutions that we've identified in TheyDo. So that's a short overview of all the different ones that we have. Let's jump into the templates, and then we can do the macro as the end.
So this is called the Jobs to be Done timeline, and the book that I'm referring to, where this originates from, is from Bob Musta. He was actually working together with Clayton Christensen, the innovator around the Jobs to be Done framework. And he wrote a book called Demand-Side Sales. And it's not a book on sales, it's actually a book on journey management. So what he lays out is that, people are actually, the Jobs to be Done timeline is a process of making progress. And that's, I think, what our customers use when making the Jobs to be Done timeline. So it is a journey, and it starts with the first thought. And from there, you start passive looking. Like the example in the book he shares, which I really like, is like buying a bed. Like one day you wake up with, maybe some issues in your neck, but you're not going to go to, I don't know, a website like Kaspar and buy a new mattress, right? That's not how it works. So you go and maybe I should fix my neck. And then you start looking passively. And at some point, there's a trigger event, like this neck problem starts to be a thing, and you start to argue with your spouse about it. And then he or she says, no, you should do something about it. And that's when you start active looking. So the trigger events between those are, happening from one phase to another. And this ultimately leads you to make a decision, make a short list, make a purchase decision, and then consuming. And then looking back like, hey, am I satisfied? So in a sense, you can see Jobs to be Done being a perfect timeline. All right, so I will actually build one with us just to give an idea of how that would work in TheyDo, I created a quick base for us. And then actually the phases that we just saw, passive looking, active looking, deciding, those would be like the phases everyone goes through. So here we would have like passive looking, where also the trigger is starting, and then we have active looking, and then it's going to be like decision. This would be like the timeline that people walk through. And then, of course, it depends entirely on the way you are organized. Like, are you a consumer-led business? Are you a B2B business? You have different customer types that experience this, and this is where the personas come in. So I would recommend you keep your personas in the journey, because different people influence each other also at different cutoff points. Like I mentioned, my spouse, in my case, my wife, would be a different persona influencing my purchase decisions, right? So we'd have a bunch of personas. I'm just going to add one. So that's one I would add to the template. And then what you see in the jobs to be done framework and thinking, and I think this is not something that you see in the image here, is that you have forces of progress and things that hold you back. So what I like to do is add these in the job to be done timeline. And basically we can have like quotes, comments, or different types of lanes, but I'll just use the quotes, and then I'll call them forces of progress. That can be like the neck starting to hurt more. And I can also have, I'll do a similar lane, because I can choose the lane type and then use it for different purposes. In this case, force of progress and holding you back, or me, if you want to put the customer front and center. And this gives you an idea of how teams can structure, like from their perspective, what they've found in their data or research, what holds customers back or making progress along the timeline. And then you will have multiple steps, like this will be the first trigger. Some cases it's a whole phase, the trigger, maybe multiple events. I like to do it one event, but this is how you would fill it in. So using the jobs to be done thinking as a sequence of events leading up to a decision, ultimately leading to being satisfied or not, is what jobs to be done is about. Now, I think this is the structure I like to use, and I'll share this one with the show notes in the webinar. And if everyone walks through the timeline of the jobs to be done using this template, it will be easy to compare the different jobs customers have to do. So save it as a template, job to be done, timeline, and you are good to go.
Interestingly, also maybe as an addition to the jobs to be done, Jochem, is we do have a job to be done template actually that you can use. And interestingly, it's structured. It's actually kind of like a mix of job to be done and service design. So in terms of the lanes are very service designy. So it needs pains, gains. But what's interesting is that the forces, the things that help you and the things that don't help you, as you map them in jobs to be done, are pretty much can be said to be kind of the same as pains and gains. So, in the end, it's all about just mapping the steps that people go through and noting down like what helps them per step and what doesn't help them per step. That's the underlying thought, of course. So yeah, feel free to, use our job to be done template and customize it however you want. So that's how you create a new journey with a service blueprint. But now it's completely empty. So to help you guys out, what we also have is a example. So every time you start with one of the templates that we've created, you can also use the preview to actually see a filled in example using that blueprint that we created. So here we go. This is a service blueprint that's being created using the service blueprint template. And let me just talk you through the basic steps that are part of a service blueprint. So the goal of a service blueprint is really like to map the internal actions and the processes and the people, that you need to support a customer journey. So what you see here, this journey is a basic restaurant journey. So, you make a reservation, you enter the restaurant, you order your meal, the yada, 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 the whole 9 yards. But of course, to make that experience possible, lots of things have to happen in the background. And in the service blueprint, you order those according to 3 main categories, which are often expanded upon, by the way, but this is like the basic structure, you know. Those 3 things that you map per step are, first of all, the front stage action. So the front stage action describe all the things that you can see as a customer. So it's everything that's visible to customers. So, you know, if you make a reservation, for example, you take the reservation over the phone, and that's something that you want to, map there. Or you make the restaurant, or you make the reservation through an app. Well, you know, that's also something that you see as a customer. And what you also always see in, if you Google this, is like underneath the front stage action, you have the line of visibility. So now the layer underneath that you want to map is, you know, what are all the backstage actions that have to happen to make all those front stage action possible. So, for example, if you take an order, right? If you order your meal and you take an order, you know, someone comes over to your table, you make the order. But of course, on the backstage, the order has to be processed, you know, it has to be put maybe somewhere in a system that you use for managing the orders, or maybe, you know, there's just like a wall of little post-its with all the things that people have ordered for the cooks to actually make it. So that's a typical backstage action. It's something that the customer doesn't see, but it has to happen if you want to make the step possible. And then one layer below that are actually the systems. So, you know, the things before were all actions that have to be taken. Underneath here are the supporting systems and processes that make those actions possible. So, for example, when it comes to processing the order, that's the action that's being taken in the backstage. But to enable that action to be possible, you need an order management system. You know, it can be something digital. It can be like the post-its in the kitchen, as I mentioned. But there has to be some kind of system. So that's also what you have to map here. And the interesting thing is, in TheyDo, you can actually map all those things using solutions. And the great thing about that is that, you know, solutions can be linked to any type of journey. So these types of front stage actions, backstage actions, or supporting systems might also be something that you came up with, you know, in a brainstorming session earlier, for example. And then once you start mapping this blueprint, you might actually already just be able to, you know, go here and look at, like, hey, what types of solutions did we already think about, you know? So that's also where TheyDo, I think, starts shining, is that you really, when you start building these types of blueprints, you don't have to start from scratch, but you can already look at, like, hey, what solutions did we already capture, or what types of things do we already have that we can use to actually make this journey possible. Yeah, that's I guess the high level overview of this. I guess if you have more specific questions, let's dive into those, because there's so much you can tell about this.
Can we dig in a bit about the solutions themselves? Like, what of course, this is like an easy example to get us on board, like what sort of blueprints is. But what I've seen is that there's either super complex maps with like hundreds of layers of different, you know, processes all like interacting with each other, but like getting the abstraction level right is one thing. But then the power of it would be, let's take, you have a CRM, right? And your CRM is all these different touch points with the customer. So what you see here with the yellow blocks, like, can you open a solution? I think this is where teams actually make a difference. Can you speak about how to organize those artifacts in your blueprint to make them actionable? I think this is more important than even the template itself, like how this works.
Yeah. So these solutions are at this point very basic. We haven't actually filled them in so much yet. But here, yeah, you can actually, you know, when you added a solution, you can add a description. You can add, of course, the many more information about that solution. So, you know, link it to maybe a dashboard on it, or add a rating, or tag it as well.
So what I see customers do with this is not only like figure out like what one blueprint is, but understand, okay, so we have a landing page. Okay, so that sits with marketing, that's fine. But we have like 8 different journeys where, you know, if you look at the blueprint as the way that you design your journeys, the blueprints actually show that customers from 8 different journeys actually interact with that same landing page from all different angles. So having this one solution that links across all these different steps allows your organization to map out like, hey, how are we structured from a process perspective, from a solution perspective, from a CRM perspective, from a landing page perspective. Like every little detail can be matched with what journey steps they go through.
Yeah, that's what you see here. So this is a filled-in solution, and here you can actually see that you can track all the different journeys that and the different steps in those journeys that solution has been mapped to. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good. Anyone
Exactly.
that finds that I have like 20 million lanes in my blueprint a familiar thing? Like, does that ring a bell? Anyone wants to share an example or even an example of how they simplified this? Is there anyone in the audience who dares to share?
I see one question. Do you have a first preview of implement the Qualtrics feature or metrics in general? From Jeroen. Well, maybe at the end, but that's not really related to the templates right now. So we might touch upon that in the end though. Yeah, because of course, if once you have those solutions here, you will also be able to actually show that, different metrics there. So for example, in this example, this is like, you can see the sliders if you like assemble your own plan for a mobile subscription. Maybe you can actually have some Qualtrics input on, what's the conversion, or like what do people actually like this step or not, or do they think it's confusing perhaps? So yeah, you will be able to actually show that in the solution as well. Well, you all understand now like how you can start from there, right? So you go to new journey, you click on the TheyDo basic ones, and let's look at a preview of a journey that's been created with the lifecycle template. So here, what we've done in the lifecycle template is actually we've set this up as a very high level lifecycle template. So it really shows you the customer experience from, well, in this case, really, I am not a customer, I become a customer, or I am a customer. But of course, in TheyDo, we also have a journey framework to do that. But we wanted to also include this lifecycle so you can actually use whatever works best for you. So you can choose, like, do I want to create a lifecycle overview with a journey? Or do I actually want to map it in a framework? And we actually see an interesting combination where lots of companies, do a combination of very zoomed out high level journeys just to sketch out the general picture, macro journeys as we call them, and much more detailed journeys called micro journeys. So keep that in mind when I explain this. Like, this is usually in combination with much more detailed, smaller journeys that maybe dive into only one of these steps, as you can see here. So, for example, in the step I become a customer, you can see some the general experience of that step. So I look for information about this is the case is like a restaurant app or like supermarket app actually. So you might look up information about it, some different experiences by different personas. There might be some opportunities there and some solutions, like an app landing page or a better store description where you can read about the app. But interestingly, because this is such a zoomed out level, you might also have like a marketing funnel that is very specific to only this step, so when you become a customer, for example. And the interesting thing about TheyDo is you can also link those steps, those different journeys, and as a lane, and in the steps that they play a role in. So for example, here, like I set up the app, right? That is very high level. And in this step, you only catch like the general reaction of the customers. But if you want to know more about that app, you can really zoom into the micro journey. I set up the food app where you might have, one step per screen with all the screens there as well, and all the pains and gains and conversion metrics, etc. So the lifecycle journey can really be used as this really zoomed out overview that gives you the general perspective on how customers are experiencing the steps. And it works great in combination with, much more zoomed in journeys that you can use to really track every step in a really granular level. So when we look at micro versus macro journeys, this is often something that you could do. So we often see companies that to create this overview, they create one macro journey, let's start from the beginning. Like every framework, right? Like can be subdivided into journey boards. So if you have a framework that goes from, I become a customer to, so if you go to the framework, so here we have a test framework with like I orient, I close, I onboard, oh wait, this is not the right one. If you go to the demo environment, there we go. So here, this is a whole life cycle. So you might go through awareness, purchase, use, and I renew. So you cut it up, that experience, into manageable parts, in this case, 4 parts. And then you subdivide it even further. So for example, purchase can be subdivided into you purchase, you set up your device, create an account, and I begin using. And what we see companies do a lot is that they create macro journeys that span across this whole journey board. So for example, you might have, as you see here, a macro journey called I buy a new mobile subscription online that actually crosses across all of those stages. But you might also have some micro journeys that really dive into one specific step in this experience. Like, for example, I install my phone and subscription. That could actually be a process that, especially, UXers, for example, flesh out much more in detail. So that's actually an interesting distinction that you can make to map different levels, like views. And to sum it up, micro journeys are very detailed. So when it comes to micro journeys, they often show one step per screen, for example. I have an example here that I can show while I explain this. So in this case, this is a supermarket experience, so really, like, you enter the store, you sanitize your hands, you get a shopping trolley, this is all very detailed stuff. Often what we see is they're completed in one go. There's no breaks in a micro journey. So they really can be completed chronologically from one end to the other. The customer often doesn't change locations. And also a micro journey often plays out inside one channel. And the result is that they achieve one customer goal. In this case, they get the groceries that they need. So the customer journey really achieves one goal here, as opposed to macro journeys. So if we go back to the macro journey that I just showed, this is really zoomed out. So this really gives a high level overview. Lots of these different steps might actually switch between different channels. You download the app, it's digital, but you get inspired to cook. Maybe you're doing that at home. So it's much more zoomed out. It's not based on channel, or maybe it's even channel agnostic. Like, you don't even care about the different channels here, like you just summarize the whole experience regardless of the channel. And the result is that, you achieve many customer goals across a whole macro journey like this. And both of those types of journeys are relevant. If you want to zoom that perspective, macro journeys are the way to go. If you really want to flesh out like one part of the experience, micro journeys are what you need. So the framework of TheyDo actually allows you to map all those things and, create overview of that. So
one of the things I really like, and I've seen companies successfully do, is like break down those micro journeys into like the simplest patterns. Like, I don't know, when you're a big bank, like in your example, or you're an insurance company, or, you have to, at some point as a customer, identify yourself, which is like simple journey. I go to this, if it's digital, to this website, I scan my passport, do all these steps, like that will be a micro journey. But for all the different products a bank might offer, that specific micro journey is then used across different views of understanding. If I buy a mortgage, if I buy or create a new personal bank account, if I want to get an interest account, all those things will need at some point that micro journey of identification. So it can really help teams innovate around that journey that people do in one go, and then see how it's stacked up to the bigger picture in different places of the customer experience.
Exactly. Another example here, I get groceries spans across the whole board of getting groceries across all of these stages, preparing, going to the store, shopping. But there's many different smaller micro journeys here that dive into those experiences really.
Let me take it one step further. I know Jeroen also asked about the data. I'm going to show it anyway, and then we're going to end for today. I know maybe we should come back for templates another time, Kaspar, but if you, let's say, you're going to integrate your CX data, so now I'm in a journey, and this is a prototype. Let's say you have, your NPS survey, and I'm going to do this very fast, but if you are in the journey and then add your, let's say, data from, in this case, Qualtrics, it's coming in, you have your NPS set up, and you're measuring this on a journey level. I'm doing a simple example. We're going to pull in the data, connect that metric to your journey. But as you know, Flavio, this is on a journey level, but bringing it up one level up, like on the framework level, you have your experience based on the empathy. But you can also start to say like, hey, from the journeys that have an NPS that just dropped or is X, what are the journeys that we should actually focus on? And that way you can start to like bring qual and quant together. And there's a big topic, obviously, we'll tackle a little bit later this year, but then you know what is coming. So you also have your quantitative insights in one place. Okay, everyone. Hope this answers your question a little bit, Flavio.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Okay, so let me see. We're going to end for today, but this is part of a series. Kaspar and I have a ton of fun creating content for you, doing this live, and we'll be back October 18th, 4 o'clock, Central European time zone. So most folks in the world can join. And we're going to go one step further. We did a small tweak on preview of it today, but we're going to go into type and tag management, and enable everyone to speak the same language, it should say. And this says the same page. Let me update that. But to help all teams in your organization to speak the same language, setting up a custom taxonomy. So if you are interested in that, join us in 2-3 weeks, October 18th. And until then, thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure answering your questions, seeing you live, and the recording obviously will find a way to your inbox. I had a ton of fun. Thank you, Kaspar, for being so detailed today.
Love to do it. See you next time.
Awesome. See you, everyone. Have a great day, and till the next time.
Yes. Bye, everyone.